there are recruiters who say, I looked at every single resume, right? They don't do it. They might give it a 10-second glance, if at all. Humans can say, I'm a 100% match. The algorithm's can look at it and say, you're a 40% match, and nobody calls you. You've got to find the midpoint where you get them excited. They see you as the solution to what they've got to get done, but they have to get you now in front of them to figure out how are you going to do that for them.
Welcome to the Corporate X-Files. I'm your host, Dr. Louise Korver. I've been an executive coach and leadership advisors for well over 25 years, working with boards of directors, top executives, and their teams. I created the X-Files to give you access to fascinating people, valuable tools, and insights into the behind-the-scenes challenges executives face every day. But these are topics that often are discussed only with me. If you subscribe to this podcast, you'll stay updated on ideas that can boost your self-confidence, help you better understand psychology and human behavior, and provide tips that you can use on managing difficult people in situations that are part of everyone's organizational life. Whether you're a global executive in a multinational company or a solopreneur in your own professional service business, subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the latest ideas to unlock your own success. Today's episode is the inside story on how to get discovered in a digital world. Ever since COVID, we've all learned the importance of staying visible and capturing the attention of key individuals, especially recruiters and their sourcers who are using algorithms to find passive candidates for positions that aren't even yet posted or maybe even known about because the incumbent is still in the job. Today, we're going to discover what these people do for a living and how it works, and why you sometimes don't receive the courtesy of a thank you but no thanks letter when you apply for a job. And even once you have made it to the third rounds of interviews and don't get anything back, we'll cover that too. So that's why I'm going to reveal my secret weapon, Kevin Turner. I look forward to discovering what's hot and what's not with talent acquisition teams around the world. And so, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Dr. Korver, I really appreciate being here. I hope I can call you Louise. And it's exciting. You know, we are in a digital world. Everything is processed. Everything is ranked. Everything has to be within categories and searchable to really kind of bubble up to the top, right? Highly competitive markets. I would venture to say that companies are in control right now. But we can get ahead of the competition if we understand the digital processing that's going on. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about my favorite platform, which is LinkedIn. So,
yeah. So, Kevin, can you tell the podcast followers what you do for a living?
If you ask my wife, not much. Just kidding. I am intensely on in. I do organizational and personal branding. I always say I help people eliminate the personal branding, and that's what you see out there. Most people throw everything they've got into their presentation and figure, well, they'll sort it out. They'll pick out what they want and it'll all make sense. Nobody's going to do that but our mothers, right? We can't be that Jack and Jill of all trades, master of none, right? Is the end of that. And nobody hires masters of none unless they're running a convent, which I can't do, but that's kind of where I am. That's what I help people do is really kind of refine, define, and be known for those values you bring to the table.
That's really hard, Kevin, you know that writing a resume, and you've helped me with mine, takes a lot of hours. And you give us this list of things that we're supposed to write down for you and kind of get into our own heads about it. And I find that process so difficult. How do you help us get that started?
And you're absolutely right. It is difficult to write about ourselves. We have a tendency as humans, we either go one direction or the other. We either become extremely conservative I don't want to brag. I don't want to tell you too much. I don't want to go too far out there because I don't want to feel that uncomfortness, right, of that process. That's one side of it. The other side of it is everything I did made these things happen. So I got to tell you every single detail. What happens on the first one is you never get them excited. On the second one, you took them beyond the point of excited. They're actually tired now, right? You've got to find the midpoint where you get them excited. They see you as the solution to what they've got to get done, but they have to get you now in front of them to figure out how are you going to do that for them. And that's, key in this process of building that brand, building that presentation. And again, it's really hard to do by yourself. It's much easier when you have somebody helping you kind of guide the way, right? I always say sometimes I can be the gas and the steering, but you've got to be the brakes once in a while, right? You might even have to grab that steering wheel and say, we're going to go a little bit over this way. But that's part of the process where you can't do that yourself. The other thing I find is an interesting phenomena. When we as humans, we look at something, we look at a job description and we go, I'm 100%. That is me. They wrote it about me. If I apply, I'm absolutely going to get a response from them.
I've heard that. I've heard that from others, and I have experienced that myself.
Well, the algorithms then go in there and they say, okay, this is what we're looking for, right? We're not finding it in that presentation. And an algorithm is just math. It's running. It's pretty simple in its sense of what it looks for and how it computes everything. Humans are very different. We read between the lines. So if it says you got to have A, B, and C, and we know we do, but we don't see it in the wording sometimes, right? We assume it's there because we know it is. And that's where that reading between the lines, humans can say, I'm 100% match. The algorithm's going to look at it and say, you're a 40% match and nobody calls you, right? That's just the way it is. And to be able to detect that difference can make all the difference when you put things together. So, to me, I think that's the fascinating part.
So are there algorithms for different types of jobs or different industries or day of the week, or how are they changed? Like, how do we know what the algorithms are?
There's basic concepts behind most of the algorithms that rank and score us against a job position, right? So there's basic types, but they're going to completely vary by the job itself. So normally within a system, let's say an applicant tracking system, if a job description was loaded into that system, the algorithms then go look at that job description and they say, well, here are the key skills, right? Here's maybe implicit skills, direct skills. They're going to list those. They're going to offer it back to whoever inputted and saying, this is what we're going to look for, right? The individual on the other side says, that looks right, or add these couple more, or take that one out because it's not important. That establishes the first algorithm that runs, and that algorithm is basically a keyword algorithm. Fairly simple. Well, keyword algorithms were so basic in processing that you could actually put a bunch of words free floating at the bottom of the resume, and you could beat all the keywords and beat the algorithm and get a callback. It was really simple. It was so simple that people were abusing the system, and they had dentists showing up for cardiologist jobs. If I'm having a heart episode, I don't want to see my dentist. It's like I want to see my cardiologist.
That gave you the heart attack in the first place, right?
So people were gaming the system. So they said, okay, we got to make it a little more complex. So we're going to do a couple of things. One of them is we're going to do what we call weighting, right? And that basically means if in the job description it said you needed to have whatever that skill might be, digital marketing, right? And it mentioned in the job description 4 times, then it's going to look for that content, whether it's the LinkedIn profile or it's a resume, it's going to look for that content to contain that keyword at least 4 times. That's weighting.
That specific.
So that helps a little bit. That gets you a little closer. Now, the next step, if you think about it, the speed of business, things change. I've been doing branding, marketing, sales for 35 plus years, let's say. right? What I did 35 plus years ago is very different than what I do today. What I did 6 months ago is somewhat different from what I do today. So they have this value, right? The kind of current value of a skill set based on the speed of business. So for most of us, they'll give us 10 years, 15 years, maybe. That's where they're going to run those two algorithms to begin with, right? So if you had some great experience and it was 30 years ago, they might get to it as a human, but as an algorithm, it's going to say, I need current business skill set. And so it's really going to look for these things in that top portion of a resume or a profile. That's where it's going to look to go and find them. So,
How many how many years are they looking when they say current?
Current is anywhere from 10 to 15 years.
Okay, so that's average. 10 to 15.
Yeah. Now, if you were in cybersecurity, I couldn't care less what you did 15 years ago or 10 years ago, or maybe even last week, right? What are you working on today? So these timeframes can change dramatically. So depending on that industry and position and, those kind of dynamics, it can get accelerated or compressed, in that sense. What you do know, if you ever apply online, and let's say, the resume goes in and it only takes maybe one or two jobs out of the resume, and then it tells you if you want to put more in, you can. What it's really telling you is this is our timing of skill. Anything more than that, you're just kind of wasting your digital time, and my digital time is a computation, right? So they're kind of telling you don't really need to put any more in because we're going to make our judgment based on what we took. So kind of a slight signal, from the system of what that is. So a lot of people will spend time fighting an application and adding more positions than the position is even going to consider in the process.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So if you can't find enough places to write what you want to write, then that's the indication that you should stop right there.
Well, if it hasn't automatically parsed it and placed it into the database, right?
Okay.
So if it only took the top two jobs or maybe the top three jobs, what it's really telling you, if you add those up, that's the time frame or the current value of skills, right? That's all they're going to look at. That's all they're going to run their algorithms on. Now, once you're at the interview, that can be a whole different story. That's where you bring in that full resume and maybe they dive in a little deeper and go, oh, I didn't realize you were also with Coca-Cola or whatever that might have been, right? That's where they're going to get to that point, but you've got to beat that digital processing at the beginning to get there.
So let's just go back for 1 second. I wanted to just ask, for the benefit of people that may have not heard of this before, an applicant tracking system, which I've seen the initials ATS. Mm-hmm. So describe that for just a second so that we all understand basically what that applicant tracking system includes.
And the good thing to know, first of all, is there's over 300 plus applicant tracking systems.
Oh my God.
They all function in the sense that they respect database best practices. So they have kind of these ground rules, right? In building out, because it is a database. And basically what it does is when you apply, right, the content that you're sending in, it's going to examine that and say, these are things that I want to take out and put into the database for your application, right? The reason it does that, the reason it parses information in and only takes what it wants is we're human. Sometimes we can do things that are not smart. Maybe in my resume, I put my social security number, right? Because I thought you were supposed to do that in the US or whatever it is, whatever the excuse is, right? Or I put in there that, hey, I'm a 5-time cancer survivor. I'm not, but if I was, I would, maybe I'd want to put that in there. If I did, now I've given the system information that has privacy issues, right? Okay, who saw that? Who printed that? Where are the prints that went out on that? How do we recollect those and destroy them? If somebody gets into our database, what if they get that? So part of the processing or the parsing of that information is to get rid of critical information like that, personal information like that. That doesn't belong in the application, kind of helping us humans along that we do things right. So that's one of the reasons they parse. The other one is they're really looking for this fit to where they're going to run, their checkpoints to rank things. And an ATS, people always say, applicant tracking system is going to eliminate me out of the applicant pool, right? Technically, unless it has what we call kill questions, like did you graduate, right? If you say no, that might be one of those don't accept that candidate, right? So if they have direct questions like that where you answer yes or no, those could eliminate you. But overall, what the ATS is going to do, it's going to take that information in and it's going to rank you against the competition. So think of it like Google search. If you still do search, right? And most people are doing Perplexity or ChatGPT or whatever it is. But if you're doing a Google search and it says, here is your first page of results, right? You know that you can keep going to the next page to infinity on Google, right? They'll keep giving you more if you ask for more.
Oh, right. Right. And now
How
I know what you
often-
mean.
How often do you ever get past page 2 or 3?
Never.
Never. Most people don't. Recruiters are the same way. Decision makers are the same way. If you say 625 people applied, right? Here's your first group of 10. These are the best matches. Well, you might look at those and you go, wow, these are all rock stars. And you go, well, you know what? Just to be sure, I'll look at page number 2, another 20 or another 10 or whatever it is. You're not going down all the way to 265. And if you say, and there are recruiters say, I looked at every single resume. To really read a resume, right? To really look at that resume, you'd have to spend 20 minutes or so per resume times 265. I don't even know that math, right? They don't do it. They might give it a 10-second glance, if at all. So, when they say I read them all, they're not really getting to that point unless they see something, earth shattering. And there are probably a rare recruiter or two that actually go and dive that deep. But even with that, they say it's hard for the human brain to compare more than 5 to 10 resumes in that process. And you think about it, if you've had that stack in front of you and you're basically splitting hairs, that was what the ATS was supposed to solve. I've already done this for you, right? Here's your first group. You don't have to do much. I've given you the order of ranking, and it actually has a percentage match. So it's running those
Right, I've seen
keywords,
that.
it's running the weighting, it's running the timing, and saying these are the candidates ranked in how close they match to that job description. Now, one thing I find fascinating is I still believe networking is the fastest way inside a company, right? But at some point, they're going to put you through the process. Unless it's maybe a small mom and pop shop. They're going to put you through that process and you've got to match out. So if they've had an open online application and they've taken X amount of hundreds of applications, right? And you come in, you network your way in and you meet with Jane and Bob and they think you're incredible, right? And they want to offer you a job. In the old days, they used to say, when can you start? And you'd say, I've got a suit on today, let's go. And they'd say, okay. Doesn't happen anymore. Now they say, we're interested in you, but we need you to do one thing. Either apply online and mention you met us, right? Or we're going to take your resume, we'll send it down to HR. They'll scan it, put it into the database, and reach back out to you. Well, if all that happens and you're a 40% match, and HR goes, wait a minute, we spent all this time building this job description. We've given you, 20, 30 really top end matches. We've got 265 people in line, and you want to pick the one with the lowest score. We've got a problem, right? Either something's funny is going on, or we didn't write the job description right.
Or
You
the
gotta
resume is
yeah.
poorly written.
Yeah. And if you say poorly written, they say, okay, stop, halt, let's rewrite it, let's repost it, and let's go through the whole process again. How many people on the other side fight that with HR? Not all, I can tell you that. And probably very few, because they go back to the sense that, you know what, that top 10, they weren't bad at all. They were pretty close too. And so that's kind of one of the kind of stickers in the process. But networking again, I believe that always beats not working. The more you do, the better you are. As long as it's mutual and you're building other people and helping other people, it will always pay you back, right? But in that process, you really do want to make sure as you're networking in and you're talking to them, you ask where, hey, do you have a job description? Do you have a written job description? And when they say, well, we'll take your resume and give it to HR, just say, hey, give me a moment. I want to customize my approach in the resume so it maximizes the benefit to us both so that when HR sees it, it scores well and, we move forward.
So that's why they'll ask you to go through the process.
Yeah.
That's very
They always
interesting. No
do.
one ever says that. That's
Well,
why.
it was incentivized by US government basically because they do an EEO-1 audit every year. I have to send a crew to HQ, right? And we're doing an audit that costs time, that costs money. Basically, the US government said, if you have an applicant tracking system, you add your EEO-1 or your EEOC, questionnaire to the end, then we can have a remote auditable database. So we now know that everybody who wanted to apply could apply. There was only one way to apply, right? That's through the system or through HR scanning it in. There's only one way. And every one of them is associated with an EEO-1. Now the company has avoided millions of dollars in fines. And that is one of the incentives of why, if you network your way in, they say you've got to go through the system. And if you go through the system and you don't match, then there's two options for that decision maker. Move on with the matches or rewrite the job description and start again because it wasn't a fair process according to HR. And you think about HR, they're wonderful people, but they report to the CFO. They're risk management more than anything. So they're trying to lower the risk of a corporation. That's why they came up with these algorithms to measure people, because then you can blame the algorithm and not me if I'm HR, right? So you've got this kind of built-in risk assessment that is fair because it's going to look for the same thing in everybody. Doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, where they're from, any of those kind of things. It's directly on a math equation to give me results. And so it takes them out of the risk component of that, and it gives them something they can fall back on if it wasn't such a great hire, right? Oh, we got to adjust the algorithms.
So, yeah, I'm working with some people who are at the moment worried about getting doged in the federal government system. And they are in the process of trying to convert to a private sector resume from a CV that they've used in the government for, 15 or 20 years that has a certain format. So what you're telling me, if I understand correctly, is that if they were to use the resume or the CV that they've been using to apply for a role that they see on LinkedIn with a private company, they're not going to get past go.
Probably not. There's going to be a translation issue. Government resumes, government basically applicant tracking systems of their own, right? They allow different things than the civilian world does. They have larger areas for you to fill in per job position, right? They like you to start out with, I manage, supervised, inspired, and boom, 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 right? Whereas on the civilian world, if you did that, they wouldn't talk to you because you're too verbose, right? We want you to get to the point in the speed of business, not the speed of government. That's a difference. That's a translation, right? So you've got to do that. And then there are things you don't put in profiles or into resumes on the civilian side. You don't put like grade levels. You don't put salary ranges. You don't put that kind of stuff, right? Because it doesn't belong there. Nobody wants to care for it on the other side in that sense, and they don't use it as part of the measurement process. So there is a little bit of a translation there, but it's not hugely different. If you have a fairly decent written kind of government styled resume, that can be converted into a consumer style, a business style. It's not different. And I would say it's not as unsimilar as somebody who is going from for profit to nonprofit, right? You're gonna change the language a little bit. You're gonna change the conciseness of it a little bit. You're gonna, from business to nonprofit, you become more touchy feely. You add things in there like instead of saying profit, you say surplus. It's the same thing. It's money in the bank, right? So there's just a bit of a translation issue, in that process, but it's not anything that anybody should be really just scared of. They just need to do it the right way. And there's a lot of people out there who guide the process, right? I mean,
Okay.
you don't have to
Yep.
do it alone.
Yeah. And so are there translation systems? You mentioned before about ChatGPT. Could a person who has been in, let's say, pharma, who wants to transition into banking, just arbitrarily, I'm
Mhm.
going to say that, um, is there a way that they can push their resume as it exists today through a ChatGPT type process to translate the terminology from industry to industry?
You can use it in that sense. You can also use it to compare current state with the actual position you're applying to, right? Because it's going to say what you probably ought to get rid of and what you ought to keep and what you might need to build on, right? So those things are available. What you've got to realize with any kind of AI, it's artificial intelligence. It's not authentic intelligence. That's the best type of AI, right? So sometimes what it outputs is not always right. And it is usually very generic. So you got to make it your own and you got to make sure it is actually correct. So those are things I always say that AI can be an incredible muse, but doesn't make a very good artist, right? And if you've ever had a muse, they can be as good for you as they can be as bad for you, right? They can get you in much trouble as they can get you out of. That's really what AI is. It's a great thing for a spark, right? For an idea, for a way of approaching it. But then you've got to make sure it's right and you own it at that point.
Really, that's and so what the other thing is I picked up is that AI stands for applicant and applicant intelligence in some ways, but it also does not stand for authentic.
Authentic intelligence, not artificial intelligence, kind of like artificial flavoring,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
It's okay,
Yeah,
but I'd rather have the real stuff. So
exactly.
make sure you turn it into the real stuff, but it can help you get there or get a little
Yeah.
closer.
Well, tell me, in the work that you do, there are so many different things we've just talked about. So, of all of this, most of us are using, I think, LinkedIn as a source for business communication these days. We all lose track of people because they've changed jobs so many times and we don't have their current email. So LinkedIn's kind of the go-to lookup. How
Absolutely.
did you get involved in LinkedIn?
It really came about. I joined LinkedIn very early on in 2005. I was within the first 2 million people to join in. And we're now at I think it's 1,300,000,000, right?
Oh my
Huge
god.
growth over, a 22-year period. That's pretty incredible. But the reason I joined into LinkedIn is I've lived in 5 different countries. I've lived in 3 different states. I have done business into 140 countries. I have friends all over the world. And the old PayPal, or not PayPal, but what a pen pal system wasn't going to work for me, right? I needed a digital kind of base for all those people to be there together so that I could see what is happening every single day of their life. It wasn't Facebook, that just didn't work for me. LinkedIn worked for me because I'm really fired up and charged about global business. And so it was the perfect kind of, opportunity there. I love it, and that's what got me into LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is just like an applicant tracking system. It's a database business. People don't realize on LinkedIn of those 1.3 billion members out there, we are not LinkedIn's customer. Even if we're paying premium, we're not LinkedIn's customer. That's why we don't have a phone number to call, right? That's why we don't have an email of somebody that knows us over there. Doesn't happen because we're actually the product on LinkedIn. It's a database business and we are the product. So we've got to fit that database in the sense of being the perfect best product. So that's one of the things that people forget on LinkedIn. Not only do this personal branding where they throw everything they can in there, but they don't respect the database best practices. So one small thing on LinkedIn can make a huge difference, and that is to look for what's called market value filters. And basically, when you're filling out your LinkedIn profile, you'll notice when you start typing in, you'll get a little drop-down box in certain areas. What that drop-down box is trying to tell you is these are the categories that we recognize that you want to put your file under, right? Imagine LinkedIn like a huge filing cabinet of 1 billion plus files in there. You let anybody put them in any way they wanted to, make up your own order, make up your own categories, just throw it in the file. You'd never be able to pull anything out. I can't monetize a messy filing cabinet, but if you fit these market value filters, then I can pull you up and I can serve you as a perfect product. So market value filters are like locations. Believe it or not, LinkedIn's changed their location database. I believe it's about 6 times in a very short period, just a few years. So some locations don't exist anymore.
Like what?
They've changed degree titles in the way they represent degree titles. So if you selected your degree title 5 years ago, it might be showing up in LinkedIn database is not a degree at all. So
Really?
you got to go back, you got to check that market value title and use what comes in the drop-down box. Same thing with titles of experience. People always look at that. And, I'm the ninja guru of digital, whatever it is. That doesn't exist in the real world. That's what the company called you, so nobody could steal you away, right? Because they can't find you.
Paid you extra for that. Yeah.
Figure out what they would call you and every other company in the real market. Use that title, define it in the definition as internally known as. And we learned this many years ago. We did the transition for the head of HR for Yahoo. His title was Cloud9 Navigator.
It was called what?
Cloud9 Navigator. Cloud9 Navigator. What would that be? I thought initially he sold SaaS, right? No, he was the chief human resource officer. We made the change and he was picked up off LinkedIn within 2 weeks for his just incredible opportunity. And it was because he fit the categories. He became a perfect product and LinkedIn could serve them to that recruiter. And that was it. And, LinkedIn, they just released their annual reports. It's $17.4 billion a year now. Over $11 billion of that comes from one tool set that they sell to the market. It's called Recruiter. So they're more than 65% of LinkedIn's business. LinkedIn is designed around that customer, just as we would if we had a store, right? And one type of customer did 65% of our business, we'd make it easy on them. The other 500 customers, different kinds, they could fit the system because we're going to take care of this one. That's what LinkedIn does. If you become the perfect product for Recruiter, everything else on LinkedIn fits. Your posts go further, your search results, you come up higher, you're ranked higher, you appear more. It all fits in because they know what you are and what values you bring to the table. And they're going to try to make that work for them to make money.
Wow.
It's I love the concepts behind database practice within LinkedIn. And it goes back to, if you think about it, you've probably heard about 6 degrees of separation, right? Within 6 handshakes, you can meet anybody in the world. The more first handshakes you have, the fewer of the others you need, right? So LinkedIn knew this. They actually have the patent on it, believe it or not. That's why they cut us off at 3 handshakes or 3 degrees on LinkedIn. You can't see a 4th, 5th, and 6th degree connection on LinkedIn. They don't exist to you. That's so you can be sold to the other 3, or the other 3 can be sold to you. If you could see everything on LinkedIn, they couldn't then sell $11 billion worth of access to recruiters, right? That's why LinkedIn has been wildly profitable since year 1.
Wow.
It took Facebook 22 years to make $1.
That's
Now
mind
they
blowing.
barely broke even, all those
Wow.
years and many years they lost. LinkedIn had been making money since the very beginning because they understood how to divide and monetize that database. So
Okay,
if
so
you
we all
take
know
that same approach,
Zuckerberg. Who were the guys that created LinkedIn?
there's actually 5 of them. I've got them in a great article. Reid Hoffman, who is still there, is one of the founders. And believe it or not, and I always find this interesting, he was a huge trivia fan, bar game trivia for 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Oh, I was just thinking about Kevin
Right?
Bacon. Yeah.
That's where he got the concept. We believe that's where he got the concept for LinkedIn. You take those 6 degrees, you cut it in half, you charge them to get the other half.
That's mind blowing.
Sometimes inspiration is simple, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you kind of a techie type question then. I always find that I get an email that says so and so wants to connect with you. And then I go to my LinkedIn account and I instantly get ADHD. I'm like, oh, who wrote me? What's this? Who's there? And there's this feed going. Do you know? Do you know? Have you talked to? Whatever. And I find myself like going down the rabbit hole. And I don't even remember initially whose email was that I was looking at. So is there any way around just getting lost in that system just because there's so many people and so much interest in
And
different
not
things?
everybody can be like me and spend 6, 8 hours a day on LinkedIn, right? Most people have
Yeah,
jobs
that's
they
quite
do
true.
that require them to do other things. I don't. This is what I do. This is
You
what I
get
help
paid
share with
for it.
everybody,
That's
right?
why you're in it 6 or 7 hours a day.
But most people can afford maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, kind of like
Yeah.
reading the newspaper in a way, right? Catch up on all the events. And so you've got to be really organized when you go into LinkedIn. And one of the things, if you think about this as a database business, right? Activity on LinkedIn lets LinkedIn know that you, as a data point, are current and accurate because you wouldn't be active if your profile wasn't done right, right? So they make you a better product with activity. Activity means, yeah, you're there. People who never go to LinkedIn, LinkedIn goes, well, I don't know if that stuff's still good. So I'm not going to serve them up as a perfect product. The more active you are, the better LinkedIn believes your content is more accurate. And you think about it, they're the old expression, sunlight is the best disinfectant. LinkedIn is full of sunshine, right? If you throw it out there, somebody's going to challenge it if it isn't right. That's LinkedIn. Now, one of the things that if you want to get active, you could keep changing your profile all the time. That's activity, but that will drive you bonkers and you'll get it wrong most of the time, right? Because you're just
And it
adjusting the
drives us nuts because every time somebody changes their picture, we get notified and I don't really care, if I
Yeah, they
can put it
turn me
that
down
way,
some
but
notifications, luckily. But the key is we've got this lovely feed when we come to LinkedIn, right? And that's LinkedIn trying to figure out what we're interested in. They're using algorithms to do that. They're also making money on sponsored, promoted, and advertising within that. So you could spend hours a day doom scrolling to find 1 or 2 pieces that are decent. Don't do it. Set up what I call a favorite content creator filter. And that basically means you go to that search box, right? You don't have to put anything in the search box, just put your cursor in there, click return on a Mac, put enter on a computer, right? And that's going to give you a new page that's going to have filters at the top. And what you want to select is, and this is what I do, you select post, because I want to see posts, right? I select last 24 hours because I want to check it every day in the morning when I'm having my coffee, like reading the newspaper, right? So every 24 hours. And then there's another one, it says by member. And by member, you start typing in the content creators you want to hear from. Maybe it's a target of 10 CEOs from companies that you want to work for, right? or thought leaders in an industry, or just people that you appreciate the content they write, right? So you put them in there. And when you click show search results, it's going to show you a new feed, no advertising, right? No promoted stuff, no things that LinkedIn thinks you want because you just told them what you want, right? Now you could do that every single day, but that's a lot of clicks. What you do at that point is you basically bookmark that URL. Then you give the bookmark a name, top 10 CEOs of companies I'm interested in, whatever the name is, right? Maybe not that long. And every time you open your browser up in the morning, you click that bookmark and it gives you the top 10, what they've posted in the last 24 hours. Maybe they didn't post anything, or maybe only one did, but you're always going to be there at the latest, right? Then you can go in, you can, comment on it, add value in your comment, maybe begin a conversation. Then you react to it. You always want to react after comment. But that establishes a connectivity within LinkedIn with those targets. And believe it or not, when a recruiter looks you up as a product, it lets them know if you've been communicating with other people within the company through commenting. It lets the recruiter know if you're following the company, if you're following the top executives, right? If you're connected with them. All those things come through in LinkedIn Recruiter and give you a step up. So not only are you building a relationship with those pivot points, right, that could take you forward in a career, but they're also showing that within Recruiter. So you've kind of got some built-in proof that you'd fit the culture, right? Number one thing people don't get hired for, well, I don't think you'll fit the culture. Well, if you're connected with 30 people with inside the company, you know the company. If you're following the leaders and you're commenting and they're commenting back, you've got a relationship. You're going to be a fit above anybody else. So again, play it like a database, right? And know these things all come into play. And so, but that setting up that favorite content creator filter, hugely valuable in the sense of saving time, being extremely effective, and never missing what you should be involved in.
I have to have you tell me through this one more time, real quick.
Okay.
So go to the
search box on LinkedIn, right?
You put your cursor in it.
Yeah. You either click return if you've got a Mac, or you click enter if you have a PC, right?
Okay. So that's
going to give you a new page with different filters. They're a little green filter, little green kind of button style. You select the one that's timing, and you would do the last 24 hours. You can do the last month. You can do the last week. I want to check it every morning, so I'm going to do 24 hours, right? You also select post because that's what I want to see. Yeah. And then you go over by member, which is a third filter in there. I think there's usually about 6 filters up there. You go to that one. It's all the way over to the right side. And when you open that one up, you start typing names. It's going to give you a drop-down box. You check the drop-down box that applies, and you go back and type another name. Check the box, type another name, check the box, right? And when you hit that submit, it's going to give you those results. If you like the results, you then bookmark it, give it a name, so you can just click on it every morning. And let's say it's really working well for you. And maybe you landed that next opportunity. You're like, you know what, but I know Bob and I know Jane, and they're doing the same thing and they're in the same industry. I'm going to send them that URL so they can bookmark it. Then they don't have to go through the process. That URL works for everybody in the same way.
Interesting.
So it's kind of cool in that sense. If you find a resource like that, you want to share it. Here's your top 10 LinkedIn experts, right? You could share that with people as one URL. They bookmark it. And now every time they click it, they see the content of those top 10. So
fascinating.
It's a lot of fun things.
That's helpful. So we talked about LinkedIn, how it started, why you're interested in it. We talked about the algorithms and why they're important. We talked about what an ATS is. We talked about how the recruiter uses it and why it is set up with pull down windows that meet the needs of the $11 billion worth of customers that they get. Talked about job description and how to get in the top 10. We talked about, Kevin Baker, 6 Degrees of Separation. We talked about this excellent idea of getting your favorite content. The only thing we haven't talked about is how to write the resume. Is that a different topic?
It is a huge topic.
Okay.
And it varies by experience level and industry, positions. There's a lot of variables in it, but it's usually a much more conservative writing. It's very condensed that's in the consumer side, right? There's a style to it, but it is very succinct, very to the point. And right now you've got to back it up with proof metrics because that's what they want to know. They don't care about skills, responsible fors, because they wouldn't hire if they didn't know you're responsible, right? That they really want to know is, what did you do above and beyond for the last organization? So I might be able to predict what you're going to do for me above and beyond. That's what they want to know. That's Achiever's resume. That's what's hot right now.
Okay. Well, sounds like we better have you come back and talk about the whole resume writing process and how to help people get their heads in that, because that is really, I've always found that it's really hard for me to write my own, but I can assess somebody else's really easily.
And that goes back to that you can read between the lines when it's somebody else's stuff. When it's your stuff, you could write a bullet, and no matter how many times you rewrote it or reread it, you can't make it better or worse, or you just don't know, right? Because it's already in your head. You can't read between the lines. You can't see what's missing, but you can see that on other people's stuff. Immediately you look at it and go, wow, I would do this, this, and this, and this, and this, this. That's the magic of not being too connected to what's written. And that's why sometimes when we write something, we got to let it cool, right? Let it cool for a couple of days and you come back and you go, wow, that's terrible. Or
I had a client, I have a client who's an attorney, and she said to me in one of our sessions recently, I have a really hard time being able to edit my own work.
Oh, yeah.
And, she's been doing this for 30 years, right? And I thought, I wonder if she realizes that you have to let it chill. You have to let it cool off. Otherwise, you're trying to reinvent the wheel every time you touch it, right?
No, absolutely.
And we talked about that. She hadn't even realized that.
When you add in a growing population with neurodiversity, it gets even worse.
Oh, I agree.
They can actually see something on the paper, read it, and it's not what's actually on the paper. That's not unusual because, again, they know what they were wanting to say. They're reading between the lines. They're able to pull that together and make that happen, but it might not even show up on the paper in that sense. So it is a complex thing. It is kind of like teaching oil painting, right? There isn't a perfect way to paint any oil painting or a perfect scene to paint in any oil painting or the perfect colors to use, but it's got to represent you and it's got to excite those that you want to buy that painting, right? That's how it works. So, that resume writing is very much an art in that sense. Same thing with LinkedIn profile building. Outside of the science pieces of how do you fit the database, there's an art to how you put that all together.
Well, Kevin, I have to say, grateful for how much time you've given us today and how much great information you've shared. I have forwarded people to you that I have worked with for a long time, and they always say the same thing. Thank you for sending me to Kevin.
Oh,
and so,
it's not
this
an easy
is
process.
no,
They make it through, but
a lot of people haven't rewritten their resume, as I can recall, 30 years, or, they worked for the same company. They never saw something coming that would, leave them on the street. So they never updated it, and it's hard to remember and all that stuff. So, there is an art to it, but there's also the part that we own, which is we ought to take a look at ourselves every so many years when the market changes and when we've been
Absolutely.
promoted and things like that. But thank God for you, Kevin, that you can get us to sit down and hold our hands while we go through this process of writing our resumes, applying
And
for
we
positions
love it. That's the
online.
best part. If you had somebody doing it that couldn't really care less to do it, that's how the results are going to come out. We love doing it, and we love the discovery process with people. When they get excited, we get excited, right? And when they get to the end, they're like, "Wow, I would hire V." That's what we want to hear, right? So that's where we're going to get to. So
Yeah. Well, Kevin, it's wonderful to spend this time with you. I think you and Dana just do an amazing job, and this is such a specialized area that I feel grateful that I was introduced to you way back in the beginning by Lou, and I think there was somebody else in this picture too, and I off the top of my head can't recall who else was in there that mentioned you. Oh yeah, so we talked about it was uh, another writer who
yeah,
didn't have time that one time. And so, unfortunately, you've gotten the bulk of all the business after that.
yeah. We appreciate it, and we'll always earn it.
I do
It's part of the fun.
appreciate that. You always do. And grateful to the time we've spent, grateful for the work that you do. And please tell Dana I said hello. And I look forward to having you come back and talk about this grueling process of writing your resume.
Okay. Please,
Thanks,
thank you for having me, and we'll talk again soon.
Perfect.
Bye.